I hate this service.
Is it working? Did you go into Chrome? So if you go into Chrome, you should come up with an acceptable use policy.
Chrome's giving me so much trouble lately that I'm going to be avoiding it, but I'm going to do Chrome now.
Okay. So I'm going to start inviting people because
and what will happen is you should also see that there's a link up above.
Yep.
You want to make sure you copy that into your clipboard before you head out because we can send that via email.
Okay.
To the folks if they don't really accept. You know, if Joe's not on his Gmail page.
Yep.
You're not going to see that green box.
So we have one viewer. Joe Rivers joined the video call. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
So you're on board.
Good.
And Maura's on board. Holy cow, we have more than one person. This is great.
Yeah.
Hi.
Peggy's here too.
Okay.
Hi.
How we doing? So we're going to go ahead and start. And hopefully if people need to join, they can join. Welcome. This is our last PLP webinar of the 2014-2015 school year. It's our sort of our last in a line of experiments. And so we hope you've, I don't know if you found anything useful, but it's been good professional development. And it's made us think about the PLPs quite a bit. So as you know, some of us, actually Joe and Maura, I think all of us on the call are headed to the middle grades institute, and there's going to be quite a bit about personalization and personalized learning. And I think one of the items on the agenda today was just to talk about whether or not you know, the school-centered versus the student-centered idea. And in particular, we've been hearing, or I've been hearing a lot about how PLPs fit in with learning management systems and what people think about that and what are the pros and cons of each. So maybe we can have just a little discussion about that. And then afterwards, we can talk about next steps or how people are rolling it out in their schools next year, maybe some changes or improvements they're planning. And then we can wrap up talking about maybe some additional professional development plans for next year that are tentatively in the works. Does anybody want to add anything to that?
I think, well, we just lost, no, that sounds great. We just lost Joe. But I think there's feedback on his speakers because it keeps going to his screen. So Google Hangout's picking that up, and so they play whatever audio is going. So I don't know if you can turn your speakers down, Joe, or
they can mute themselves. Is that better?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not hearing feedback at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, Maura, did you want to add anything to the agenda?
No, I looked over it. It looked really good. I have to head out probably around like 4:05 because I have another meeting.
Okay.
But the agenda looks great.
Okay. Joe, is there anything you wanted to add on your end?
No.
Okay.
Just here to listen.
Okay. Also, Susan Hennessy is here. She's troubleshooting and maybe taking some notes as well. So I guess the thing that I want is not concerning to me, but is interesting to me is to I've been listening to a couple different conversations of different school districts, and I'm hearing a lot about learning management systems and how PLPs are going to fit into learning management systems. And I just wonder what people's thoughts are on that and how I mean, because we're not on a learning management system, I don't know how many people are, or if the advantages to that, the disadvantages to that, and if anybody wants to speak to that issue, I'd be happy to listen because I'm sort of developing an opinion.
So we are not. Oh, hi, Jen.
Jennifer Burton just joined the call. Correct.
So we are not on a learning management system. It's one of those things that I've had in the back of my mind for a long time, and I've tried different things, but I don't have like a set learning management system. And but I think when we're thinking about the PLP, the main things that we have 3 main areas where we need to think about, and that's sort of the archiving of information, the reflection of information, and then the sort of performance piece about information. And I think for us, we almost use our Google Drive and Hapara as our learning management system, even though it isn't one in a traditional sense like a Schoology or an Edmodo. But it's definitely the way that we are keeping track of student work. And it's where we're sort of archiving all of the work and holding it for storage so that when it does come time for the performance piece, putting it up on the portfolio site, it's ready for students to access. And so I think, I think it is a conversation that schools need to think about because it is that 3-step process. Like, where are you going to be storing all of your information, and where are you going to be archiving for students and working with students? And then from there, they're sort of picking their performance pieces. And we use, I know Don and I, we both use the Google sort of suite for education of tools. So then we're using Blogger as a reflective part. We kind of have this 3-pronged approach for us at school.
Okay, that's interesting the way that you put that as having Google Drive and Hapara as your management system. I consider those tools, and when I think about a learning management system, I also think about sort of an assessment component to it. And I guess my attitude, and I don't know, maybe this is primitive, but I've gone through like 2 management systems already. I was using Moodle for a while, and I was using PBWiki for a while. And when you start having to migrate all your work from one place to another, or you get fluent in one of them, you then all of a sudden it starts to change. And so I've kind of thrown my chips in with Google, and I don't know how other people are feeling about their learning management systems, because I know right now there's Naviance, there's Edmodo, there's Schoology, Canvas, there's Blackboard at UVM. So there's all this competition for learning management systems, and I don't know where that's going to end up and how that's going to influence Vermont educators in the design of their PLP.
I know one of the things on my list for this summer is to explore the use of a learning management system, and not thinking of it in terms of my PLP, because I still will have students archive all their work in Drive and then pull things over from there. But finding a learning management system where students can be more interactive and have a sort of digital classroom as well, and allow for that that to happen, and have forums and discussion boards, and sort of try to streamline some different pieces with my students. And so I definitely want to look into it, and I haven't even thought about it in terms of the portfolio model, because I think in my mind everything's still going to be stored in the Google Drive.
Now, are you using, for your PLP, are you using Google Sites at all?
Yep.
So Google Sites is that's where the kid goes and they build their portfolio for their conferences or their exhibitions, correct?
Yes.
So I guess my question too is, what technical skills are kids developing? What are the transferable skills that kids are developing through the use of Google Sites, and by building their own sort of web page that they would either would miss by using sort of one that's formulated through a learning management system, or am I just not thinking through it clearly enough? with things like Naviance, are they able to personalize their own web pages? Are they able to do some of the nitty-gritty programming and layout and design that I think makes Google Sites a good tool for beginners?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does anybody know? So
I haven't really gone in and played around with it enough to really say either way, but I know just watching what happens in my classroom, I mean, I think there's a lot of collaborative problem solving that's happening sort of parallel, like I'm problem solving and students are problem solving together and working through things, and it's really neat to see that. And I think, it can be frustrating, but I think it also requires sort of that use of the growth mindset, and some students who might not excel in other things really excel in building websites, and they're able to take a leadership role in the classroom. And so that's really neat to see, is the learning from each other about the design for the portfolio.
okay, Susan Hennessy is going to give us some insight here.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, everybody. We haven't heard yet, though, from Jen and Joe if there's any kind of a learning management system in place at either of your schools. Before I launch into the possibilities, I'd love to hear from you guys.
Google Sites in Brattleboro.
Oh, Jennifer, you're on mute. Hold on a second. Oh,
She has done yours.
I don't think she can. Hold on, I'm sending her.
Oh, she said no.
Okay. Let me just
Can
see.
you type in the chat?
Okay. Can you?
Jennifer, can you hear us, though? There you go.
Are you still on? There you are. Jennifer? Okay.
Jennifer, can you hear us, though?
Hold on one second.
Oh,
Yep. Something
can
just
you
happened.
guys hear me?
Yes.
We can. Not anymore. Wait a minute.
Whoops.
Now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't hear you when I joined. I could only hear you when I watched. So I was watching, but then when I wanted to say something, the timing was all off from what I was watching. And anyway, sorry, I don't know what the problem was.
Do you have a learning management system at your school? And if so, what is it?
We don't. We're using Google Classroom for the first time this year, but it's sort of, hit or miss. But what I wanted to say was one of the reasons for not using something like Naviance is that it might not be as transferable between schools, and it might not be something they could keep when they left the school.
That's an excellent point. I've heard that before, and that's really good, because if you do have a population of people who are moving fairly frequently, you do want to have something that's portable and accessible from any computer, really.
Right. And part of Google is I hate to say it, but it's free, and I really am just saying that in the sense that it's accessible to any school. Some schools can afford some things, others not, but everybody can access Gmail, Google, apps.
Okay. So now we're getting.
So I think the feedback site. So Jennifer, can you try again and then back again?
I could only hear part of your question. I'm sorry.
Jennifer, I think the feedback is coming from your site, and I'm wondering if you can mute yourself using the mute tool at the top of your Google
Successful.
until you need to speak. There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Thank you. So one thing I'd want to say about a learning management system that might, a functionality that might be interesting as we move forward to help kids track movement and progression towards a learning target, is a learning management system that allows teachers to track learning targets, to assign them assessments. So what happens is, like school Canvas, pay a big money for any of the assignments that are created, a bank of all of these targets, or standards, whether it's internal team-based standards, whether it's transferable skills, and then it's literally of a button for the assignment or the assessment, and then teachers can track based on that alignment. That's going to be important as we start to get keeping track of learning. Classroom is
Susan, couldn't hear you. There's really bad feedback, so it's cutting up really bad.
So in Brattleboro, are you having the same problem?
Not right now. It's coming in clear, but this is the first time in a while.
Okay. And Maura, is it any better now?
Yes.
Okay. And I know with Jen, if she's muted, I think what's happening is the broadcast is also playing potentially from the live event. So if we can keep it like this for now, I think that would be great. So should I repeat what I was saying about the learning management system and progressions?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So if I'm in a learning management system like Canvas or Schoology, I create an assignment, an online digital assignment. I have a button that I can click that brings me out to a bank of standards, whether they're the Common Core, math, or language arts standards, or I can customize those standards to be the transferable skills that the school has decided on and aligned with the agency of ed if they'd like to. And each assignment that I shoot out to kids, I can select those standards, and each assessment I create in that system can also be aligned to these learning targets and standards. What that allows me to do and what allows the students to do is to click a button and see a graphic representation of where they are on that progression toward that learning target. So schools are saying, if in a down the road, if we really are trying to keep track of in this kind of longitudinal assessment scheme of progressions, we're going to need a tool that's going to allow us to be able to run those kinds of reports. We want ones that kids can click the button and run the report too. They're partnering with us in this. What I was saying about sites and about classroom, they don't have that functionality. There's no reporting. You're going to have to figure out a system for yourself with your kids, and people are doing it. But again, in the grand scheme of things, I'm inviting you to think differently about some of these other tools as we work together.
Susan, oh, sorry.
I think Don was talking about this earlier around just how far down the rabbit hole we want to go with proficiencies on our PLPs. Frankly, Susan, that sounds a little scary to be clicking learning targets in English standards and thinking that's what our PLP is going to look like to begin with. I'd rather put an emphasis, at least on beginning schools, with focusing on the transferable skills and having it more centered on the student and their goals and those kinds of things. I think what you're talking about is second-year implementation, maybe,
right,
and not initial implementation. Is that what you're going with?
Joe, I'm so glad you clarified that and asked that question, because it is projecting well out into the future.
Right.
And that horrible brave new world that I just described, if you do go to every Common Core standard, that becomes competency or checklists, and we're not talking about that at all. What I'm hopeful is people are thinking about transferable skills, maybe common performance-based assessments that are authentic and relevant, and we start to help kids track that in a way.
Susan, it makes me think about the day we went, just to sort of put it in our mind. So I was able to go with Susan and visit some 9th grade classrooms in Burlington who are proficiency-based humanities classrooms. And they had learning targets for their students, and students could retake as many times as they wanted until they reached their proficiency. and the teachers were really struggling. Okay, how do we keep track of who's made the proficient on this and then what they're supposed to be working on when you have, 20 kids a period? And so they were, on the fly trying to figure it out, and they were using sticker charts and putting, the students' names, they were putting stickers where they were proficient and thinking about, and they were reflecting on it that they had put in this system and they had this idea, but they didn't really have the foundation to really make it proficiency based, in the sense that a student, you're kind of working where you're working and you're working towards your proficiency on these different skills. And so, when thinking about that, it is a good solution, to sort of the organizational piece around that, and really having kids maybe choose their own paths to show the proficiencies, which I think has a lot of power. But I do think, as Joe was saying, it's not something to dive into right away. I think it would take a little while.
So I just want to play the devil's advocate a little bit, and I think the most important thing is that we're asking kids what their experience is down the road, and I don't know if, and maybe one question I have is, a graph going to motivate a kid to do better, right? And is clicking on these proficiencies and having all this massive amount of data, is that going to be more effective than having kids write and communicate thoughtfully about their strengths and challenges? So, for example, if kids can identify what the learning targets are, so they say that I have to write an argument paper and here's my standards, and then they write it and the teacher assesses them and says, you can go back and redo this if you want, but let's talk about what your strengths and challenges were, and can you identify those for me, right? I think my hypothesis is that the act of doing that for the kid, the act of reflecting on that and saying, here's where I didn't meet the standard, or here's where I struggled, or here's where I did a really, really good. I'm thinking that experience of thinking about it and reflecting is more powerful than the numbers. I could be wrong. And just thinking about measurement, like I run, and so if I run a mile, I want to know how fast I ran. And then the next day, if I run the same distance, I need to know how fast I ran to compare it, right? And so I'm just wondering how all this is gonna fit in, and in particular, how are we gonna structure effective ways of figuring out what's working for kids? Because we're supposedly proficiency based, but we're using Power School, mm-hmm. and kids are getting like decimal scores, 3.5. Well, you were a little bit better than proficient, but you weren't proficient with distinction. So it's real. So I don't know where this is going. This is why I brought it up. But I also, I'm concerned about learning management systems and their cost, maybe, and whether they're going to go away. Because if you notice, there's all these competitors are joining the field of education, and they're running. I mean, it's going crazy, and there's going to be winners and losers, and how's that all going to shake out down the road? And so these are all really good questions, and it's a really good conversation, and I think it's one that needs to be sort of thought about carefully as we move into the third or fourth year of the PLPs.
Mm-hmm. I might just toss out there that I think I love what you just posed, but I wonder if it has to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
And I think if we're very intentional about just some of those upper level enduring understanding kind of scaffolded frameworks for kids, a learning management system might give them a visual way to own the tracking of it and take some of that ownership, take it away from the teachers per se, and then have something to be able to have conversations with you about their progressions. So if they're built around learning targets and scales and rubrics, it just again gives them fodder for being able to control some of that, if it's done well.
Right.
I think the idea that it's done well is up to us in the middle school to model the well-doneness.
And I think also being very intentional about how kids are going to be discussing these and how they're going to be structuring their conversations so that they can actually be thinking and understanding about their strengths and challenges is going to be really important. Does anybody have anything else to add? If not, I know Maura has limited time, and we kind of wanted to just talk about maybe people's next steps, and then I think that was it. Let me just double check here. Yeah, so next steps. So, Joe, what are your next steps at Brattleboro?
We're coming to MGI, and we're going to be working on putting together PLPs. That will be our emphasis. There will be 17 of us there.
And so 17, and how many teams does that include?
Well, unfortunately, I think there's only one team out of the 4 or 5 that we have that will have full representation. The others are going to be only partially represented. So what we're going to try to do is create the shell of a PLP with the non-negotiables, and then bring that back with the idea that there can be some customization by teams, but we will have already created at the Institute the shell of what we're going to be doing for the following year.
And are your staff members thinking actively about this? Has this been put on their plate, earlier this year, or what's the feeling among the staff members?
They know just what I said. There has been no other in-depth conversation about these things. They've been introduced to Act 77. But the conversation we were just having around learning management systems and those sorts of things, that will all be new for them.
And do you think there's a level of apprehension or excitement about this, or what's your?
Well, I think it's more an openness to seeing what it is and then making some judgments. I don't know that anybody's been exposed enough to the process and what the possible changes could be for them to actually make an informed opinion about what they believe around this stuff. So just being at the Institute for the week will certainly move them in some way. And they'll either say, hey, this sounds cool, this whole middle grades thing makes sense, or they'll say the opposite. They'll figure it out. But we're basically a 7 through 12 secondary school trained perspective with the shell of a middle grades program, but not the implementation of a middle grades program or the mindset of a middle grades program. So I think there's a big learning curve of just what middle grades best practice can be.
That sounds good. That sounds like a challenge, you know?
Oh yeah, it'll be a challenge.
And I guess, Jennifer, can you type in the chat? Okay. Maura, what are your next, do you have any goals lined up for next year and PLPs or all that?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of we're getting feedback from someone.
No.
Are you guys hearing it?
Nope.
We're getting it in Brattleboro.
Yes.
Should I try again?
Yeah. Are you still getting it? What should we do?
I don't know if stopping the broadcast will make a difference. We can keep going in the PLP discussion without having it be broadcast.
Okay.
I think, although I don't know who's watching it, so I don't know.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can problem solve it, and if not, we're going to try and stop the broadcast to the YouTube, and go from there. Okay.
If you don't, let's go and see if there's anything. Can you try to mute Joe?
Maura, can you hear us now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Is there feedback still?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hold on. What should we do?
Can we mute us for a bit?
Sure. Wait, Joe's muted still. Okay. So Joe, you have to unmute yourself, and then Maura, we're gonna mute our machine and see if that helps. So we won't be talking to you.
Okay. Okay. Is anyone hearing feedback? Okay, I don't hear any of it now. So goals for next year. We're sort of in the throes of the end of school, so we have less than a week left. So we've kind of entered the time warp that happens the last week of school. But we have started reflecting, and we're going to have students on Monday working through some of sort of the wrapping up portfolios. All students are creating a summer wellness goal that they're going to be working on. We're going to ask students to blog if they can. Most of them can do it off of their, iPods and iPhones over the summer. And summer wellness goals can be everything from, their summer job to they want to run a 5K, they want to read some books, they want to volunteer somewhere. And so we talk about wellness a lot in our building and making healthy choices. And so students are going to be sort of informally working on a goal over the summer. And we're also going to be doing some sort of students reflecting on the portfolios. And I think with the first year we had some really high hopes, and it sort of, one of the things that I've really identified is that we've done so much during like our TA time. I'm feeling like we really didn't have enough TA time, and so we're trying to sort of tweak our schedule to allow for more TA time to work on the portfolio and to work on different team-based things that we want to work on, but also thinking about how can we integrate the portfolio into the core classes. I think we were really resistant to doing that because we didn't want it to be the humanities teachers are going to have them write the bios, and the humanities teachers will have them write the reflections because it's writing. And we've sort of been working with this, and so another goal is really to cut down on language and thinking about, how are we having students express themselves, because it doesn't have to be in writing. There are so many other ways of having students really be able to express themselves. So I guess if I was to boil it down to a few goals, it would be to integrate the portfolio more meaningfully into the curriculum. It would be coming up with better ways for student self-expression, and then also really taking some time to look at the student feedback and try and come up with sort of put some systems in place to make it maybe more engaging for the students after this first year. And then the final thing that I would like to see is really think about goals development and our mission-related goals, which are our transferable skills, and being more explicit with those, and really helping students to identify sort of those meaningful goals and thinking about tracking them next year. So I have a lot to think about and a lot of goals, but I think it's a good time of year to start thinking about those things.
Okay, Susan has 2 questions for you.
Hi. One is, I know from having a conversation with your principal that there might be some portfolio showcase things happening next week, so I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, so
I'm going to mute.
Next week, on Monday, our 8th graders are going to be sharing their portfolios with their 9th grade teachers, which is the first time that we've really ever thought about an 8th to 9th grade transition in that way, where students are meeting the teachers beforehand in a formal way. I think it's always happened in an informal way, and they do their shadow, but not in a meaningful sort of academic, these are my goals, this is what I want to do. Then what's going to happen on Tuesday is we're going to go, the 7th grade teachers are going to go down to the 6th grade and be with the 6th grade students and their teachers, and they're going to showcase their portfolios to us. And while that's happening, the 8th grade teachers are going to be with the 7th grade students doing an activity. So it's almost like, you have your traditional step it up, okay, you meet your new teacher, oh, look at their classroom, it's so nice, but we're making it meaningful and having a purpose. And on that last day of school, the 8th grade isn't here. The 8th grade students have already graduated. So we have 4 grade levels worth of teachers and 3 grade levels worth of students. So we're able to shuffle in that sort of a way. And so for all grades, I believe, there's going to be a time to do an activity with your future students. And then there's also going to be a time to do a portfolio showcase with their current teachers and their teachers for next year. So we've really been thinking about, how do we structure this in a meaningful way? And I think, it is the first time and it's the end of the year. We're all kind of like, oh my gosh, we have to get it done. And so I know we've been talking about having a protocol where we're really there to help our students sort of manage so that students can have one-on-one conversations with their teachers that they're going to have for next year. So the other students are going to be doing a quiet activity. We're going to be circulating. But I think the hope is that, after we've been doing this, maybe next year will look more like a round table with both teachers. Students are presenting to both, maybe younger students and older students and having it be a little different. But I'm really excited to see what they're doing. And we're also going to have some of our students, we're picking some of our students to go to, we have curriculum camps, so our whole school district goes to, it's everyone kindergarten through 12th grade, Morrisville and Stowe comes together for a week to do district level curriculum work. And so we're actually bringing our students with us to present their portfolios to all the teachers in the district. And then Stowe High School also does a portfolio, and they're going to have a few seniors that are going to present. And so we're going to be able to have a little showcase there too, which will be really great.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That's such a good idea about those 8th graders sharing with, or sorry, the students sharing with their new teachers. That's really smart. That's a good idea. I'm going to steal that one right off you while it's hot. That's awesome. So for our goals here, I think the biggest one for me is that I've been talking with James Nagel about tying our standards more closely to what's happening with our Google Sites. And I think I have a workaround for that, where I'm going to have another Google site that's going to have a table of contents with our standards. Because once you have a table of contents, you can link to the individual sections of that. So if you have argument writing in your table of contents, that becomes a unique URL. And then that way, when kids are writing about their argument writing paper, they can link back to those standards. And then I will be expecting them to use the language from the standards to identify their strengths and challenges. So that's sort of one thing I'm thinking about. And then also, as part of their biography page, I'm going to be asking them to do a short video, who am I as a reader and who am I as a writer, and just have them start thinking about themselves as readers and writers, and then to check back in with them over the course of the year to see how that's changing or staying the same. And it's in a weird way what working with the PLP has really made me understand is how deeply rooted literacy is to our kids. Not only literacy reading and writing, but also reading unique languages like text messages and YouTube videos and gaming, and how I don't know if we're seeing all the literacies that kids are experiencing on a regular and daily basis, and how we can transfer our teaching of literacy strategies from traditional text onto these new sort of 21st century platforms that kids are participating in. I also, the other thing is gaming. I continue to look at gaming as a way of engaging students, and I believe that we're missing the boat on that as educational systems, and I really believe that we need to get on board with that. So gaming, linking the standards more closely to the PLPs, having kids identify themselves as who are they as literate citizens. Those are going to be big elements. And then I also think when you mentioned the having kids perform or demonstrate their learning in ways other than reading and writing, I think photography has become almost universal with the quality of the cameras and on phones and things like that. And so now we need to start talking to kids about how to get the good pictures that are going to demonstrate what they've learned. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but are your words, are they good? And talking to kids about visual aesthetic And I think that's a great way of tying into history and art as well. And I see that being a really critical tie in the humanities. So the other thing that's happening too right now is I just collected data from 2 cohorts. One cohort of kids who's gone through the 2 years of PLP, and one cohort of kids who's gone through once. And 90% of the kids in both cohorts answered the question, do you think that PLP is valuable? They said yes. And 90% of the kids said they want to do it in the following year, whether that's in high school or whether that's in 8th grade. And so I'm building a database of research to try and figure out what kids are engaged in and how they're engaged, and how we can continue to promote that, and how we can use the kids, their voice, and their to promote good decision making and good curriculum decisions, and also the best way to use student input to implement transferable skills across our teaching. So, does anybody have any other comments or thoughts or feedback?
I have to run.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Maura. Enjoy it. I hope. Are you going to a meeting on the mountain bike trail, or are you going to a meeting?
I'm going to a meeting, and then 6 o'clock is my mountain bike meeting.
Okay, because it's unbelievable outside. It's a beautiful day. Enjoy, and thank you very much. We'll see you at MGI.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Joe, you still there?
Yes, still here.
Any comments? Final thoughts?
Of course. I've got a lot to talk about, Don. My concern is around what you'd been talking about, I think, in the beginning, and it has to do with efficiency-based record keeping, which is where Susan was going. And I think that could trump all the work you've done before around student-directed goal setting and online identity for students. And I'm concerned about that as we get into MGI, because I think one does come before the other. Now there's feedback going. For us anyway. So how are you going to deal with that, Susan?
Hold on a second, Joe. I'm going to turn myself off. And if you want to talk about how you see that conflict playing out, I would enjoy hearing that.
Well, the experience I just had in the last couple of days was I was at the Great Schools Partnership Proficiency-based hoopla in Rutland at Castleton. And everybody there, 30-some districts, are looking to grab onto a learning management system that's going to magically create the ability to keep track of every single proficiency and learning outcome and all that stuff. And that's what PLPs are for a great majority of the people who were attending that couple days of meetings. And that's not what Montpelier's created, what Peoples has created. What they've created are student-centered identities for kids, like an electronic home at school, in which they can brag about the things that they feel good about and give evidence that school has meaning to them. And trading, and I don't know that it's a trade, but just the idea of what we're creating here is a way to keep track of whether you've hit all the learning outcomes, as opposed to this is a way for you to find meaning in school and be able to brag about your learning. I think that's been a real, jolt in the arm for some of us to watch what you've done, Don, and to see kids flourish in that kind of setting that's not necessarily tied to anything other than the joy of learning and then recording it. And that's different than checking boxes. And I think there are a lot of people that are just looking to check boxes. And so if we look to do that, I think it could be a problem.
Joe had to take a phone call.
Okay. Well, I think that's something we started the conversation out sort of on this vein, and I think we're going to end on that vein too. That's a conflict that we're going to have to resolve, and it's not going to get resolved today. But I do want to thank everybody who showed up on the call today. I thought this discussion was one of our more productive ones, and really appreciate it. If there's any viewers out there, we appreciate you dropping by. Next year, we're hoping to formalize these webinars to include more professional development for educators, more question and answer periods, and I have everybody's address and information. So we'll be reaching out to you to join us again in the fall if we don't see you over the course of the summer. So thank you very much, Susan, for helping, and thank you everybody for joining. And if I don't see you or talk to you next week, have an unbelievable summer. I hope everybody gets out there and enjoys the heck out of it. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.